From the New England School of Communications at Husson University, this is the Maine Report, the way news should be.
Good morning and welcome to the Maine Report. I'm your host, Nicole Duplessis. Today we're going to be talking about what it means to be a journalist, how to be a good anchor, and the skills that it takes to do both. Right now joining me is WABI-TV 5 anchor and reporter, Joy Hollowell. Joy, thank you for being here this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
So you've been in the field for quite some time. So what made you interested in actually entering this field?
Well, I'm a naturally nosy person. I think you have to have that. I think you have to be naturally curious. I loved to write when I was in school, and so obviously wanted to do something with writing, and really like to tell people stories. Was really just fascinated by people, so this just seemed like a natural field to go into.
Now, having been in the field for quite some time and, being through different experiences, doing different stories, what skills do you feel it takes to be a successful reporter?
Listen. Really be able to listen. And that's harder than it sounds, because you can think that you're getting the story, but sometimes the story is not right there, and you kind of have to think outside the box. You can be assigned a story, you get there, and some reporters make the mistake of already writing the story in their head. They've got it halfway done by the time they get there. And the real story is, maybe the person on the sidelines or maybe the family member. But whatever it is, you have to really listen and really be able to see the story for what it is, not necessarily the assignment you were given.
Now, have you ever had any experiences where you've gone out on a particular story and you've come back with a completely different story or something that you wouldn't have expected you'd come back with?
Very often. Or sometimes I come back with 3 or 4 stories.
Good.
Yeah. You start talking to people. Oh, did you know? And he was a state champion, ukulele player, something like that. I mean, you never know. And again, that's part of listening and just kind of talking and getting to know them. But yeah, you may go out and then think, oh, this is not a story. Wait a minute, how can we make this a story? Let's think outside the box. And sometimes those are the best stories that you come back with. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, other than listening, what are what would you consider to be maybe the top 3 or 5 skills that you think students coming right out of journalism school need to have in order to be successful in the field?
Well, you have to know how to write. I mean, you have to be a good writer, because that's a big part of it. You can have a great story, but if you can't relay that story to viewers, then they're not going to know. Only you know it's a good story.
Yeah.
Being able to piece everything together, I mean, you can get a lot of things out in the field, but how do you filter through everything? What are the best sound bites to use? What is the best video to use? What are the best Nat Sound Pops to use? And really being able to condense that together, because especially with today's audience, they need to be wowed pretty darn quickly, and so you really have to capture their attention right away. And then how do you keep that attention when we've all got that remote control? We want to switch that real quick. So how do you keep them entertained? How do you keep them watching?
And now, when you edit your stories, I guess, how do you go about it? Do you put Nat Sound first? Do you put like a sound bite first? Do you have a stand-up first, or does it differ between what story it is?
I typically try to start with some kind of Nat Sound.
Okay.
I typically don't do stand-ups unless they want a live look or that kind of thing. But typically I try to start with some kind of Nat Sound Pop. I just feel like it kind of eases the viewer into it a little bit. Now that Nat Sound Pop could be a sound bite too. I should include that too. If it's a crime scene. And I've talked to a neighbor who heard something horrific, or if it was a fire and I'm talking to victims and they're talking about saving their kids, with their kids jumping out of the 2nd floor, whatever it is, that's going to be whatever your lead too. So whatever it is to again instantly grab their attention so that they want to see more, they want to keep watching.
And now, when you're editing, it can depend on, there can be a really big time crunch, or you can have an afternoon, a morning. So it depends, on the day. How do you feel when you're under a time crunch, I guess, or when you feel like you're really set for time?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to multitask. If we know that we're under a time crunch, if I happen to have a photographer with me, we're communicating in the field. Okay, I'm probably going to start off with this video. I'm probably going to start off with this Nat Sound Pop, and then I'm going to write, a little bit about this. So when the editor goes in there, even though I haven't even written the script yet, he or she can start putting the skeleton together.
Right.
And then by the time my script comes in, it's just sort of inserting the holes that way. Now, if I'm by myself, sometimes as I'm logging, I'm pulling down the sound bites too. Okay, I know I'm going to want to probably start with this one. This is going to be my ending sound bite. This is a great finale sound bite. I definitely am going to want to use this Nat Sound Pop. So you still have a little bit of a skeleton,
right,
and then you can insert everything afterwards.
And now, as far as, I mean, obviously interviews make up a story. I know some people, including myself, like sometimes it can be hard to approach people and, you know, ask questions, especially if it's like a hard news story, if it's a crime story. How do you, what suggestions do you have for people?
Well, it's not easy. I mean, you know, that's one of the hardest parts of my job. I will admit that. And even now, I mean, I've been in the field, you know, quite a while, and I still dread when I have to try to talk to people, you know, that have just lost their house to a fire, or you know, God forbid, have lost someone, you know, due to a crime. You try to put yourself in their position. You know, they're not going to want to talk to you. So the first thing I say is, I'm sorry for your loss. You know, and so you're just letting them know, you know, I'm human too, and I can see this, and although I'm not experiencing it like you know, I can understand that this is not, you know, a pleasant scene, and I'm sorry that we're here. I know that this is obtrusive. You know, we would love to just talk to you about your child. You know, tell us who he is. You know, we've got this picture, we've got this name, but who was he? You know, share some thoughts with us. If it's the house, you know, we'd love to get some help for you. You know, a lot of times when we talk to victims of fires, you know, and we humanize it, we've got all these outpourings of donations. So a sad story turns into a happy ending, you know.
Now, have you found covering hard news, like over the years, has it become easier, or is it a challenge with each different story?
I think it's still a challenge, yeah. I mean, I think you can't get complacent, or then you're not a good reporter that way, you know. I think for me, it's very easy to go into some stories and be very cookie cutter in your writing. Oh, another house fire. You know, you could very easily write that in 5 or 10 seconds.
Right.
So that's where the challenge reporter comes in. How can I tell this story differently? How can I bring a different angle on this? How can I, you know, let people know that this isn't another house that caught fire and got destroyed? The fire marshal's office is going to investigate. You know, what makes this story different? And that's, you know, where you're constantly challenging yourself as a reporter.
And, you know, I know there's different instances when it isn't appropriate to do like a stand-up. When do you find it's good to do a stand-up? Because I know a lot of reporters will do it just so their face can be on TV, but sometimes, you know, that's not the most important thing. So when do you think it's good to do a stand-up?
See, it's tough because for starting reporters, I would say as much as possible because you want to get the practice, you know, and that's fine. But for me, I feel like I'm on TV enough because I do a 2.5-hour morning show. So it's actually pretty rare that I do a stand-up on television. It's got to be if I absolutely have no video to show, or it's such an obvious stand-up, you know, like I want to do something or show something. But yeah, that's a tough call because yeah, I mean, you know, the journalism books will tell you unless it's a bridge or you have nothing to show, you know, do it. But at the same time, you talk to some of the news directors today in different markets, and they want to stand up on every single story. So my advice to young reporters, to new, you know, starting out reporters would be do the stand-ups, get the practice, get used to it. You don't have to use a stand-up, but shoot it, and then you have it.
At least it's there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, we are going to take a really quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what it takes to be a good anchor. Stay tuned.
Get caught buzz driving, and you could do some hard time.
Craig, knock it off.
Sorry, Mom.
It could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. And that could set you back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Cinderella found the pet that fits her perfectly. Tiana gave her pet the royal treatment. Belle found beauty when no one else did. And you can too. Share your heart. Share your love. Bring home your forever friend. Make a shelter pet part of your world. Happily Ever After begins at theshelterpetproject.com.
Welcome back to the Maine Report. I'm your host, Nicole Duplessis, and today we are talking with WABI-TV 5 anchor and reporter Joy Hollowell.
Good morning.
Thanks again for joining us. So before the break, we were just talking about what it takes to be a reporter, you know, and students coming out of the journalism study, you know, and some skills that they might need. And as far as aspects of being a journalist today, it's a lot different than, you know, 10 years ago. So what are some things that, you know, you see now that you might not have expected?
Well, when I started out in journalism, there was no internet. I mean, I know that I'm dating myself, obviously, but it was actually just coming out. You know, we looked at it as a glorified encyclopedia, you know, and something that we type into just once in a while to get some background information. Obviously, that is not the case anymore. So for us, it was just television. That was your only medium. Slowly but surely, it evolved into, okay, you should probably just start posting things on the website too. It was an afterthought. You know, it was the website was sort of after everything else was done, all the stories are in, and you know, right before you go home, you would post on the web. Now, social media is really the avenue, the medium that a lot of people use. So it's post on social media first, then you get the story, you know, done and on the news and that kind of thing. And I think that's important for starting out journalists, is that, you know, you really have to start thinking that your viewers aren't just on television, you know, your viewers just aren't on the radio and in the newspapers. There's this whole social media medium, and it's a different kind of viewer too, you know. They do not want it longer than, you know, maybe 30 seconds. You know, minute is even too long. They want it quick. They want headlines. They want to know right away. They want a little flash, you know, little bells and whistles as well. And also, you know, not just even the website, but Facebook, Twitter, you know, Vines. We do Vines now, you know, quick Vines that we put on Twitter as well. So yeah, it's a lot more work and a lot different avenues that you have to think about.
Now, do you find it's more engaging in some aspects, and like, have you found, you know, stories through social media, like from viewers? Yes,
absolutely. You know, case in point, there was a fire last week. It was a fatal fire, unfortunately, down in central Maine, and people on social media, oh, I remember him. He was such, you know, these would be great people to interview. We would not have known about this otherwise, because it was kind of a remote area where it was, but thanks to social media, sent private messages. Hey, do you think we could maybe talk to you? Yeah, and my dad's, you know, so yeah, great resources that way.
And now, I know this is jumping back a little ways, in the first half we talked about doing, you know, stand-ups, hard news, you know, you mentioned the fire, but you're actually an anchor, and you know, when you anchor, you're technically reading a teleprompter, looking into a camera, and that can be hard for some people to get used to. Can you kind of explain, you know, the whole experience and what it's like?
Yeah, if people say to me, you know, how do you memorize all those scripts? You know, I take that as a compliment, because that means that they know I'm not reading, right? I'm not looking into a camera and reading, so I must be doing something right. But the key is, you know, you still want to remember that even though you're directly looking at the camera and the camera has the words on there, as far as the viewer's concerned, you're talking to them, right? So, you know, even though you're reading, you constantly have to be thinking about, well, if I was telling this to someone, how would I be telling them? You know, I might be looking down, I might be kind of leaning forward a little bit if it's something that I want to emphasize a little bit. So even though it's words, you're still trying to talk to someone and tell them that story at the same time.
So it's basically not, you know, you're not like a robot, you're trying to make it personal.
Yeah, but you also don't want to be distracted. I mean, there's a fine line when it comes to being an anchor, you know? You don't want people to be watching you. You want them to be getting the information from you.
And now, we all know, like, since you mentioned, like, social media, technology plays a huge part.
Huge.
And, you know, just like people rely on you guys to post things on social media, you guys rely on the teleprompters. So what happens when that freezes or when the teleprompters don't work?
And they do, and that happens. And it's hard not to panic. I mean, certainly you have backups, you know, but even those backups can fail as well. So you constantly have to be having a plan B and a plan C. Sometimes, you know, we'll just joke and say, hey folks, obviously we're having some technical difficulties here, work with us, you know, we're gonna talk about the weather a little bit. You know, if it's a story that you already know, you can kind of ad-lib the story a little bit, but sometimes just being honest with the viewers rather than trying to fake it, they appreciate that more.
And now, do you still get nervous going on air? Is it kind of like an adrenaline rush each time? Like, what is it like now that you've been in it for so long?
I mean, once in a while I will get nervous. Actually, it's funny, like if I know someone's watching, like if my in-laws are in town and I know they're watching, then I start getting a little nervous. But for the most part, I'm comfortable. But yeah, I mean, you know, if something happens and we have, you know, then you start getting a little nervous, you know, if you're not feeling comfortable. So yeah, I think there's always that, you know, I wouldn't be a good journalist if I wasn't always trying to worry about those kinds of things.
Exactly, you still worry.
Yeah.
And I guess, what advice can you give to aspiring journalists and aspiring anchors? Because, you know, being a reporter, you might want to be an anchor someday, or if you're an anchor, you might enjoy reporting more. But I guess overall, what advice could you give to young aspiring journalists?
Work for free. Intern. Because honestly, you can go to school and you can take the classes, and here at NESCom you've got great hands-on classes, which is really bringing you ahead of the curve. But until you get out there and actually do it, are you really going to know, because you may think that you want to be a reporter, and then you find that you like, producing maybe even better. Or, as you said, anchoring. Or you may think that you just want to be an anchor and then realize, oh, I don't really get to interact with people. I would rather do the reporting part of that. And if you intern, most people will take you, and if you're a really good intern, that can turn into a job in the long run anyway.
Which is always a good thing, right?
Heck yeah.
Well, that is going to be all for today, but thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you.
So again, that's the end of this edition of the Maine Report, and I'm Nicole Duplessis. Thank you for joining us.
That work?